So you may have heard about a little-known artist called Taylor Swift, who's doing a worldwide tour, including right here in Melbourne, at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, or MCG, just behind me. Like every city she's visited, Melbourne has had to get lots of people to and from a single venue, which is no easy feat. But here, we are used to major events like this, so we have lots of procedures in place and business as usual arrangements that make it move as efficiently as possible. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how Melbourne gets nearly 100,000 people to and from the MCG for all three of Taylor Swift's concerts. So obviously one of the most important ways that Melbourne gets people to and from major events is by utilising our tram network, which is the largest in the world. There are three tram routes that service the Melbourne Sports Precinct, including the MCG, the 48, 70 and 75. But during major events, like the Taylor Swift concert, these are supplemented by extra services, the 48A, 70A and 75A. These don't run the whole length of the route. They generally only run between the city and the MCG or John Cain Arena. In Taylor Swift's case, because there's so much demand, there are trams running every 1 to 2 minutes during the gate opening and closing times. As I said, this is something we're pretty used to. Even during events that are much smaller than Taylor Swift, we generally put on extra services to help cater for that extra demand. I mean, in the 5 minutes or so that I've been standing here recording to camera, there's been plenty of trams that have passed by me. There were 4 that have just gone past and there's a 5th one just coming now. So, you know, no matter how many people they are expecting, there's going to be some capacity available on one of these many trams. The other thing to mention here before we head off from the tram stop is that our trams make an effort to make sure that as many vehicles as possible are accessible. You'll see behind me 2 E-Class trams that don't normally run along Flinders Street as part of the regular services, but they do make an effort to make sure that the extra trams they put on for events are as accessible as possible. And this usually means E-Class trams like these ones behind me, sometimes even C and D-Class trams, basically whatever's available. Something else that Melbourne does during major events like a Taylor Swift concert is extending the free tram zone. This normally only covers the CBD, Docklands and the Queen Victoria Market. But during really big events like the AFL Grand Final or a Taylor Swift concert, this gets extended up to here at Jolimont Station, as well as the Route 70A and 70 trams that run down Swan Street. Something else you'll notice, which we don't normally do at tram stops, is having actual announcers on the platforms. This is a great addition to make sure that people actually know where to go, because it can be very confusing, especially if you're not familiar with Melbourne. This particular announcer, I don't know if you can hear him very well from here, is dropping Taylor Swift song references into his announcements as well, which is pretty cool. And a very nice welcome to Melbourne if you haven't been here before.
Move right inside, make room for your fellow Swifties. I don't want to hear any bad blood between you. Oh, that's terrible.
So basically what you're looking at here with the trams is the extension of the free tram zone, running extra trams to the stops that are closest to the MCG, and also putting extra information both on the ground and online to make sure people are as well informed as possible. And now just around the corner from the tram stop, we've come to Flinders Street Station, the busiest in Melbourne, where we can talk a little bit about how the train network is supporting Taylor Swift. Basically, there are 2 railway stations that service this area. Richmond and where I'm standing now, Jolimont. Jolimont doesn't have as many trains as Richmond, but it is a lot closer. What's happened over the years, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, was that the words MCG were added to the station name of Jolimont. This makes it much easier for people who aren't familiar with Melbourne to know which station to get off at. Another thing that PTV does is run extra trains after the event is finished. So for the Taylor Swift concert, each railway line that runs through Jolimont or Richmond is getting about 3 or 4 extra services. This includes V-line trains, which are running out to the regional areas. I even saw a photo the other day of the Overland train, which runs between Melbourne and Adelaide, with extra carriages fitted to it to cater for the additional demand created by the Taylor Swift concert, because she's not performing in Adelaide, and Melbourne is the next closest city. I will say while I'm here that the passenger information for train passengers is not as good as for trams. Yarra Trams have done a terrific job both on their website and on the ground at giving really clear wayfinding signage and information. For example, on the tram tracker displays on the platforms, it very clearly says MCG Taylor Swift concert, which I've never really seen before except for the grand final. So there is no doubt whatsoever which tram you need to catch. I will say though that Metro Trains do have a lot of extra customer service staff out today, and we'll probably have them tonight when the gates close as well. For a major event like this, Metro Trains will have customer service open at a station which isn't normally staffed. This isn't only to provide passengers with information, but to get people to and from the station as quickly as possible, as well as make sure people are moving safely around the platforms and resolve any overcrowding issues. So, similar to the tram platform announcers, it's always best to have people on the ground ready and available to answer any questions. Now let's talk about walking. Now, regardless of what mode of transport you use to get from wherever you are to the MCG, you have to walk the last little bit. This is done deliberately because it would be impossible to get absolutely everyone by car, bus, tram, whatever, right up to the front gate, because walking is the most space-efficient mode of transport. And to get almost 100,000 people to and from a single venue for something like a Taylor Swift concert, the only efficient way to do it is to get as many as people as possible to walk. And these efforts seem to have worked, as you can see in this graph, which shows a staggering 5,626% increase at around 11 PM in the number of people walking through Birrarung Ma that connects the MCG to Flinders Street Station. This is over 5,300 people. You can see more details of this and other locations on the City of Melbourne's Pedestrian Counter website that I've linked in the video description below. Now you'll see, of course, that this bridge and the path and everything around me is not temporary. This is all here year round. And this is part of the infrastructure built to support this massive sports and recreation precinct. So when a major event like a Taylor Swift concert does come along, you don't need to do very much else other than provide the extra public transport services that I mentioned before, because all the walking infrastructure and supporting infrastructure around it is already here. Now, normally if you come to a medium or even large-ish event at the MCG, this whole area behind me in Yarra Park would be full of cars. But Melbourne has learned over many years of having major events that you can't have that many cars parked this close to the MCG, otherwise people just can't get to it. Now, there are theoretically lots of other ways you could get to and from the MCG or a Taylor Swift concert. Like e-scooters, segways, you could swim if you really wanted to, but I'm not going to cover absolutely everything. Today we've just covered the main modes of transport and how Melbourne does it for major events, just as business as usual, but especially for a Taylor Swift concert. So that's all for today's video. As you've seen, if you come to any major event in Melbourne, you'll see things very similar to what we've just talked about. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.